Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Artist's Well. I should say good evening as well to people because our reach is now far and wide. And I know we have George from Victoria tuning in at 7 p.m. Today. So welcome to everybody. So I now to change good morning to good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is our 44th episode. And before I start, I just want to make a couple of points. Firstly, that if you are watching this on YouTube and you're enjoying the series, please subscribe to the Artist's Well. If you're watching this live, all you have to do is go onto YouTube, search the Artist's Well, and then just subscribe. It's good for us because it doesn't cost anything, but it does give a lot in terms of giving a certain prestige to the channel. And also it attracts more artists, it attracts more collectors. So it's good for everybody to do that. The second thing I want to mention is that I've launched a podcast of the Artist's Well. And podcasts are really booming these days, particularly of late. So they're particularly good for if you're out for a walk or you're in the car, you're not going to be watching anything. So a podcast is absolutely super for that. Now, I subscribe to a couple of arts podcasts, both in America, the UK, and elsewhere. And I must say they're great fun. But I'm always left with a sense of loss because I can't see the individuals and I can't see their work. So from that point of view, it lacks a certain amount. It's great for the vocal arts. You know, when we had John McGlynn now, that really is fantastic because you don't need to see, you can hear. So for poetry, acting, maybe things like that, podcasts are superb. But in my opinion, for visual arts, not really. However, if you're time poor and you're out for your walk, you can listen on podcasts to our new series. And then when it comes to the likes of showing images and so on, you can tune in to your YouTube and catch up that way with the actual visual aspect. So please subscribe to that as well. If you get the chance, just search for the Artist's Well on podcast. Now, our special guest this morning is Greene. Catherine is a sculptor. She was born in Ballinasloe, and through very circuitous routes, she has ended up down living in Castledermot in County Clare. But prior to that, she's been all over the place. She's been to Syria, she's been to India, she's been to Egypt, she's traveled across deserts. I mean, the most extraordinary thing. And strangely enough, only in her 20s was she doing that. So she's led a very interesting life and continues to. So let's go straight down and say hello to Catherine. Good morning, Catherine. How are you?
Good morning. Castledermot is in County Kildare.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay.
Signal's not great.
Castledermot's in County Kildare. I
Yeah.
never expected to end up here, but
it's a lovely part of the world. I know it well.
Good. Yeah, it's tillage country and large trees, quite flat,
Yes.
not like South Carolina, which is particularly beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And tell me, Catherine, how did you come to concentrate on the sculpting end of the arts as against any other part? Because I know you're a wonderful artist, as in drawing. You do the most beautiful drawings.
Well, I use drawing to inform my practice because I'm a figurative sculptor.
Yeah.
So light drawing has always been really important. And I have gone to Dublin consistently since I moved down here to be part of a life drawing group. Mm-hmm. Spent several years. The RHA had an open session every Friday.
Yes.
So I went up there for years and years. And it was really, it's really good for one's practice because it keeps your eyes sharp. It means when you're working figuratively, you know what you're doing, you know your anatomy.
Yes.
I mean, once you know it, then you can be a lot freer as you're executing the figure. And you need to have that basic knowledge.
Yes, and you had a major influence in the RTC, which is the Regional Technical College in Galway. Is that right?
That's right. I was there for a year doing a foundation course, and there was this incredible lecturer called Lachlan Hoare, who was absolutely fanatically passionate about the figure. And I think he was the first one that made me see it in such reverential terms, actually.
Yes.
And he was unforgiving. You could either draw or you couldn't. He was never really interested in you making nice drawings. He always wanted you to understand the construction, almost like a building, or the sort of skeletal system which led to the figure. And he wisely felt that that's in many ways how you arrive at the heart of the soul of the figure, as it were.
Yes.
So he was a major influence. And funny enough, my father loved anatomy, and because he was involved in that medical world, he was always reading anatomy books.
Yes.
And funnily enough, before when he died, we put an anatomy book in his coffin, because he'd been reading one 2 days before he died at the age of 87. So wonderful. He was always talking about cause and effect and impact on a figure. If you do A, then it's going to make B, such. So that kind of infiltrated, I suppose, through the DNA. And Lockton Horror on top of that. And then I went off to NCAD and spent 4 years there, and ended up doing because I had to earn a living. Obviously, this is a big thing with artists. How are you going to earn money so that you can run a studio, create work?
Yes.
So, teaching. I did this thing called Principles of Teaching, just like a HDIP ed. Yes. And I started teaching all over the city of Dublin, always part-time. I never wanted to be a full-time teacher, because I felt if I was, then I might lose the energy or impetus to continue to create work.
Yes.
While I was teaching, I was down in Temple Bar in the studios long before they were done up, when Jenny Gordon ran them. And I spent 3 years there, and I'd do my teaching stint, and then I'd earn a bit of money, and then I would go and travel. Yeah. Because I always wanted to be going away to exotic places. I felt Europe is a really exciting place, but I felt that Europe could wait. It's closer.
Yes.
I thought when I was younger, I could go further afield. And that's, going to the Sinai Desert for the very first time was so arbitrary. I was on a plane, I got chatting to this German girl. I was with another girlfriend, an artist. And this German girl said, go down to the Sinai Desert. So we got a bus from Cairo, went under the Suez Canal, and ended up in the Sinai Desert. And that's where I fell in love with deserts. Wow. And when I got married, my husband Robin and I went off I said, look, let's go back to Egypt. And we went to the desert, which separates, Libya. And that was quite an experience. So that's kind of traveling. So work fed travel. It was a symbiotic kind of thing. And
you were very adventurous, and you did say something to me that really struck a chord. You said that, well, firstly, that anytime you sold anything, you sort of said, right, give me, I have the money, I'm out of here, right? So off you went.
Yes.
But you did mention that when you were there, you didn't do the normal tourist route, of course, but that you found people were very welcoming once they realized that you were an artist. So you said to me that your art was your passport, which was very interesting, I thought.
Yes. Yeah. So you could be with a group of Bedouin people, and I didn't have a camera. They never wanted their photographs taken. But if you started to draw them, it's almost like they could see that you weren't trying to take something from them. They knew that you were actively engaged in making a drawing of them.
Yes.
And that led to all sorts of interesting, we got to all sorts of interesting places because of drawing.
Yeah.
People felt very relaxed and invited you into their home because you weren't taking photographs and then bringing them back and putting them in a glossy magazine or.
I know, yeah. Do you know, that's interesting because I've heard that before. A chap who was photographing people, and they hated their photographs being taken because they thought their spirit was being stolen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a similar sort of thing.
Yes, maybe. It is. It is. very similar sort of thing. And it's like you give back and then you get. That's really how it worked.
Yes, yes.
And then I'd, get work together and have shows, have exhibitions, took part in group shows. I've taken part in group shows all my life, things like Sculpture in Context, which I think it's a very interesting exhibition because it's one of the few outdoor exhibitions that exist in Dublin. There used to be independent artists. There were a lot of other outdoor shows, but they've all kind of fallen by the wayside. Yeah. The Sculpture in Context is still going. It's in the Botanic Gardens every year. And that's a great show because people who normally would not go to private or indeed EMA or, public museums are very happy to wander through the Botanic Gardens, and they get to see art without all these sort of attendant fuss. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah. Tell me before we do a little tour of your.
I've been using a foundry.
Yeah. Sorry, there is a bit of a delay which we'll have to live with, Catherine, unfortunately. One aspect of your sculpture work, is that most of it is competition led. And that's kind of an interesting area because, I remember Danny Osborne saying to me that there were about 11 other sculptors who were involved in the pitch for the Oscar Wilde monument.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a thing, in sculpting that you do enter a lot of competitions. How is that for you?
Well, it can be glorious and it can be horrendous. But the thing about competitions, the positive aspect, even if one is not successful, which happens, and I'm going to show you 3 pieces that two of which I wasn't successful for, but they've led on to something else. And that's the interesting thing about competitions. And you could use a whole year, it could take 8 weeks roughly per competition. So you could spend a whole year and you don't really have anything to show, but you have all these interesting ideas that you've been stretched in a way that you mightn't have anticipated. Because competitions are always site specific. The request is always there's generally criteria you have to fulfill. And you, as an artist, you try and fulfill that criteria, remain true to yourself, and yet come up with an interesting idea. So, you have to look upon a positive. It's just part of architects compete. So much of our work is competition, for all sorts of professions.
Yeah.
But then, I might say, okay, I'm not going to apply for anything for another year, and then you go back to your studio practice, but it has been informed by the work you've done in competitions. So that's it's the way to see it, rather than it not being successful.
Sure. I suppose you have to go with an attitude of I'm prepared to fail, because if you don't, you'll never succeed.
Fail, but you always think that you should win. That's the interesting thing. You go in and you think this is a really good idea, and they have to choose me. Yeah. And of course, you're always disappointed. No artist could say otherwise. But at the same time, it's good to do it. I enjoy it.
I remember I was quite taken aback when we started to talk first, and you said, let me show you some of my failures. And you had a certain glee about it,
Yes, there is. There is. It's not, and it doesn't, in the end, it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
Okay. It's led on to something else.
Of course.
And, I can take you through that.
Yeah, do. We'll certainly look at some of those later on. Let's have a look around your studio, because I know you've divided into 2. You've got your workshop, which is plainly where you are. But then you've got another room, which you call your wax room. Is that right?
Yes, that's
wax
correct.
Studio.
So that room, the wax room, is kind of the thinking room. It's where I do my waxes before they go to the foundry. Because if you're going to get something cast in bronze, it has to be in wax first.
All right.
So, would you like me to?
Yeah, please. Yeah, if you just reverse your camera there, we'll take a tour.
me. Takes a minute.
Yeah. And also, I think it's yeah. Now you have it.
Okay.
Now you have it. Okay.
Now I have it. So this is the wax room. So these would be, this would have been a kind of sculpture drawing idea. I'm just going to go through these drawings quite quickly. I do a lot of drawing. It's this was someone I met in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was an Israeli, and I just did a portrait of him. These are the life drawings. One of them I'm talking about. It's more construction than anything else. It's not about beauty. It's about understanding the figure. Mm-hmm. This was a drawing I did in Paris when I was on that residency in the Irish College for 6 weeks, which was great. And these 3 drawings here, the light is on them, but they were done in Kilreelig. I spent a fortnight down there some years ago with another artist. This is my wax table. So this is steel, and these are my favorite tools. Mm-hmm. See them?
Yes.
Yeah, I use them all the time for shaping the wax. So these are bits of wax that I'm working on. I have always fragments hanging around because sometimes they lead to ideas and sometimes they don't. But it's kind of arbitrary. Mm-hmm. They just, I pick them up, put them down. I'm probably going too fast. These are the saucepans that I use to melt the wax.
Yes.
To help, and that's just a group of tools there. Here we go.
Oh, yes.
I use bricks. Bricks are wonderful things. And this is that's another life drawing. I like drawing on top of drawing. So, I superimpose one model on top of another. I want to show you this book. I absolutely adore this book. It's called Why We Build by Rowan Moore, who was an architect. And he wrote this amazing book about buildings and architecture all over the world. So interesting. Yeah. Here's another drawing. A lot of these were done in the RHA. This is my bookshelf. Is my bookshelf, my sketchbooks up there. Books, poetry books, more sketchbooks. I keep all my drawings down here, just kind of thrown in a pile. Someone gets very cross at me. These are more life drawings that I've done.
Yeah.
And this was a great photograph I took through a piece of glass in the Carnoustie Museum in Paris. It's an amazing museum. It's a funeral. It's a museum of the dead. Oh. And there was just all sorts of extraordinary things there. Mm-hmm. This drawing of a head would inform some of the more recent heads that I'm doing. Again, that's all part of the practice. So I'm going to take you to the workshop now.
But your drawings, Catherine, are never pieces actually show or try and sell. They're all just to be part of the process of creating sketch.
Yeah, exactly. They're just part of the process. I don't. They're kind of working drawings. It may be a bit like an architect has a whole lot of architectural drawings. I mean, the building is built, but the drawings do exist. They're somewhere, but the architect doesn't necessarily sell them.
They're filed away.
Yeah, it's and in a way it makes me less precious about them. It allows me just do the drawing and not fuss. Yeah. I'm going to show you in the workshop. I'm going to show you a competition I applied for and was not successful. Okay. And it was for the criminal courts.
Oh yes.
Can you see it?
I can, yeah.
Okay, and you get a sense of scale. If I here, zoom in on that picture.
Mm-hmm.
You get a sense of how it would have been
Yes.
quite tall. People wouldn't have bumped into it.
Yeah.
But the idea was, the original brief was for something, they wanted something slightly different from the normal thing. So I was looking up Egyptian mythology, and they used to weigh the human heart against a feather. And if it was of equal weight, you were allowed to go into the heavens. So that was, I mean, it was fun to do. That was the three-dimensional maquette.
Yes.
These are my aprons.
Mm-hmm.
I have different aprons for different things. The leather one for welding. The sort of dusty blue one is for working on this table here.
Yes.
This is where I do a lot of my small work. And it, you know, I work with jesmonite, which is
what is jesmonite? Is it sort of plaster in Paris, or?
It's like plaster Paris, but it's more. It's got a polymer, a plastic in it, so it's a really hard material, and it can be used outside. You know, so I've been making heads that can go outside on the grass. This piece, I have I've actually taken it away. This came from a competition, another competition I applied for, and for UCD, for the sports thing. And it was based on the idea of Edward Muybridge of movement, you know, the classic photograph of a man slowly rising. And this piece is a different piece called Ecce Homo, because what arose out of the UCD thing when this whole exhibition happened, which you'll see some work at the end, whole exhibition happened because what I submitted didn't work, but then it led to this other incredible journey of making large work for the assembly rooms in Dublin. So that was very successful.
And we have a video of that, which is super.
Yeah.
This we'll show that later.
I think I love this thing.
I see you cleaned it.
I really cleaned it, yes. So so you need water, and you need stuff like that. So potassium sulfide, ferric acid, they're all used for coloring bronze. It's called catenation, and I do all that myself. I just wanted to show you this briefly. If you're trying to scale up a model, you have to divide it up, and then you know, you calculate up, and that brings me to, I wanted to mention these very important calipers. If there was a fire in the studio, I think I'd want to get these two sets of calipers, which are, I was given those by Maurice Quillinan, a really nice friend. He's a painter. And
he's actually online.
Oh, is he?
He is. I've just looked him up to see if he was there. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Maurice. I think of you every day. I use them because you told me a great story. You told me that you were working for Henry Moore, and you were using those calipers all the time. And then when you came back to Ireland, you decided you weren't going to be a painter. And you very kindly gave me those two calipers. And I love them. So they will be the first thing I rescue.
That's a lovely story. Yeah.
Yeah. And this piece I found, I absolutely love. To me, it reminds me of 9/11. Just that sort of filigree thing. And I make a lot of, when I do angel's wings, which I seem to do quite a bit, I like them broken. So it's more about their humanity rather than their success. This is like my tools here. All the things I need to make work. Saws, masks, angle grinder, wonderful, I can't even remember the name.
Vice grip, is it?
A vice. A vice, yes. Yeah. Use that all the time.
Yeah.
This is my welding mask. This one I use more. This is a fantastic welder. It used to be, welders used to be really huge, and now they're quite small. And this welder is capable of doing MIG and TIG. And this is my work shelf. These are all the acids you use to get different colors in bronze. So green, blues, browns, blacks. So this is my kind of work, storage place.
Yes.
And every now and then the studio gets really untidy, and then you tidy it up and you feel fantastic because you can see everything again.
I know the feeling. And you have a block and tackle in the center of the room there. Yeah,
that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
It's so because some of these figures, when they're larger, they're quite heavy. Yeah. Obviously it gets to the ground, and it just takes all the stress out of it because you can you're not fussed. So you just tie your figure up. In fact, they're the straps here that you'd use. See these? Yeah. You put these around here. No, it's not showing.
Yeah, no, I think we can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. This is also where I work with wax. If I'm doing a temporary work, a lot of the work I do is not permanent, which I quite enjoy. I enjoy that freedom of not fussing about having a piece there forever. So, which kind of brings me to this one that I applied for. It's a figure that would have been, I know it's very of the moment, but it was a temporary sculpture that was going to be in Dame Street on the Daniel O'Connell plinth. And the interesting thing about that sculpture, applying for it, is I've never applied to put a temporary sculpture anywhere before. And it makes you think of the moment and the political mood or the social mood at the time. And at that time, there was a huge anti-mask feeling going on. So I just made this girl with her hands on her hips, looking sassy and saying, look, this is what we must do. And the mask didn't make her invisible; it made her visible.
Yes.
I think people felt the masks; they were hidden behind the mask, but there was a visibility about the invisibility.
Catherine, Catherine, can you tell me what do you mean by non-permanent?
Well, a lot of the work I would have done before I discovered Jesmonite would have been like say this figure here on the right-hand side of the sort of animal figure looking upwards. That is done in wax.
Yes.
And that does not last outside. It's perfect it's not good for hot weather, but it's fine in frost and rain.
Okay.
But it just doesn't last in the same way. So that's why Jesmonite has come into my life. So the figure on the right, I'm beginning to reinstate again because I'd like those two. And that figure, the head, that's in Jesmonite. And I'm using a little bit of color. Color is not something I'm very confident about. Color is always a challenge to me. That's probably why I'm a sculptor. It's more about form than color.
Sure.
So
very
that's
interesting.
Really my workshop. That's where I come every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very labor-intensive business, isn't it?
I think sculpture is. Yeah, it's much more. Yes, it's very. You have to be physically fit and not get injured and do all that sort of thing. But it's. I like it. I like being a sculptor.
Catherine, can you tell me a little bit about your work routine?
Yes, I work early in the morning. So I get up early, and I like being in the studio by 7:30. In summer, it's easier, maybe 7. And I work all day. I will always do the most difficult work in the morning. And then I will do perhaps maybe there's a lot of kind of less visually challenging aspects sometimes of doing a sculpture. So I would probably do that later on in the day when it's less, when my energy has changed.
Yes.
And then generally it's nice. I like to kind of clean this table every day. No, didn't manage to sweep it yesterday because I forgot. And I like to come into a clean table and then I also like to know what I'm going to be challenged by first thing in the morning when I come into work. That's good, and then you can get straight in without too much fuss.
And would you work 5 days a week, or does it depend on
no, I would certainly work. No, I could be 6 days a week. I don't. It might be 7. It depends what I'm working on. I don't have a set time. You know, and if I'm a very disciplined. I tend to be quite disciplined and work consistently.
Yeah. Catherine Gagan asks, can you cast from Gessonite?
Yeah. In fact, probably the most successful thing is to, you can work in clay, get a mold made, and then get it cast. I'm actually a very bad mold maker. So I always end up just constructing it and then applying. I'm a modeler rather than a carver.
Yeah.
But I sort of, so I don't get my Jesmonite stuff cast. I just make it up. It's a slower process, but I never learned to make molds properly.
So Catherine, what we'll do now is we're going to go in and look at some of these because they have plenty. There's plenty of stories in there, which we can refer back to.
Yes.
So let you take your time there and switch your camera back over and pull up the presentation. So Catherine, let's take a look at some of your work, and we'll start with this very large sculpture.
Like that was a direct commission. It was a very specific request. It's not work I would normally do, but I really enjoyed doing it. And it was to celebrate the man who brought the flag to Ireland, Thomas Francis Meagher. So it's in Waterford City at the end of the quays, and it's a bronze on granite. It's when you're standing on top of the plinth, it's actually 6 meters tall because he's holding a sword. He ended up, it was like a military sculpture. He ended up governor of Montana, and he fought in the American Civil War, and fought valiantly. And they were known as the Fighting Irish, and he had, I think, a bunch of shamrock or something. So that's Thomas Francis Meagher. There is another shot, I think, of that, Alan.
Catherine, this is the second slide of the sculpture in Waterford.
Yes.
Can you see it now?
Yes, I can see it. Yeah. Good.
Okay. So tell us a bit about that. That's just a different view.
So you probably didn't hear me the first time, did you?
No, I did.
Okay, well, it's just another view of it, because sculpture is in the round, so there's always more than one view, and there's some sweet spots and some not sweet spots. So that's and the way it's placed is it's on a straight bit of road just before a corner. So if you're driving your car, you're sort of driving in towards the horse as the horse is moving around the corner with you. So there's a nice feeling about how it was situated, because I knew it was going to be near that corner. So that's why I had the horse turning to face that corner.
Yeah.
So much of sculpture is about where you put it. Context is everything.
Yeah.
No, it's as you'll see.
It's a magnificent piece. Right. Yeah. This will be very familiar to a lot of Dubliners, and in fact, almost internationally, maybe.
Yeah. The interesting story about that was when Dublin City Council and RTE wanted to celebrate the life of Dermot Morgan, or Father Ted, they didn't want an image of him because they felt that image in, say, 50 years' time, people wouldn't necessarily know who it was. So they wanted something allegorical. And I was thinking about Dermot Morgan and how his satire always exposed the truth. And in Shakespearean times, the fool always was the one closest to the king because he always told the truth and he was never afraid to not tell the truth.
Yes.
So I thought I'd make a throne, and underneath the seat there's the eye. There's an eye, as it were, and that's the all-seeing eye that Dermot Morgan was able to identify all the foibles of government. So that's it's an allegory. It's allegorical. It's homage to his cleverness, and that's how that piece arrived at that visual thing.
Wonderful. Has it moved?
No, they cleaned up the area around it. There was.
That must be it, because my daughter took a picture of it, and I said that background is completely different.
Completely different, and I haven't taken a picture since. They've taken away all that. It's kind of lightened. The whole area has become clearer and lighter.
Yes. It's much better. Yeah.
Much better. It's where Danny Osborne's sculpture is down the corner.
That's right.
This piece I made as a homage to, the title is A No Caged Bird Sings. So it's a bird cage. The doors are open, but it's I think there was a lot going on at the time where all these women were being captured in Boko Haram, and they just didn't seem to have any voice. And a lot, not all, but quite a few Middle Eastern women suffer from lack of voices, from being heard. So I made it because of that, and I ended up showing it. It was exhibited one year in the RHA, and in the next shot you'll see it's in someone's garden, which I quite like. That green, it's kind of half hidden, with these echium plants which grow every year and die every year.
All right. Yes.
So that's in a temporary material, but it seems to have lasted quite well.
Yeah.
Yep. This was a competition, actually.
Yeah.
The Peter Sutherland School of Law in UCD.
Yes.
So again, you're given a brief. The building hadn't even been built, so you're taken around. You're shown a building site and said, "This is where we think you should put your sculpture, and come up with an idea that you think is suitable." So there were, I think, 5 of us competing against each other. I had this, because it's at the beginning of the academic quarter of this University of UCD, I was thinking about the students, and they're leaving a life that they once knew, and they're breaking away, and they're going to a university life. So it's like an archway. Can you get that dog? Sorry. So you'll see in the second shot. So this, and you see the scale. It's 3 meters tall. So it's a very large piece. But they've left their past behind, and they're walking towards the academic quarter from where the sleeping area is.
So they've broken the mold.
They've broken the mold, and they're entering a new life. They're naked because, well, they ought to be. Every student ought to be totally open to a new life. So
yes.
Again, it's allegorical, as it were.
It's a wonderful piece. And tell me, just on out of pure interest, do you ever get to hear or see about the people who did not succeed in getting their submission through?
Rarely. You might know who you're competing against, and you're thinking, because they most sculptors, when they're competing for these competitions, you kind of know it's a smallish circuit.
Sure, yeah.
To know people's work. You don't really know. You don't.
Okay. Maybe I shouldn't have asked you that. That was an unfair thing to ask.
Yes. No, nothing wrong with asking that at all. This piece was made. I wanted to make this about about war, and it happened to be 1914, 1916, and I thought of all the people, all the women who are left behind. So men go off and they fight these glorious wars, and sometimes they come back and they're still at war, and they might have left a young bride, or so. I wanted to do something about the quieter side of war, and the war that maybe is in the more domestic life, not on the battlefield.
Yes.
And I put the mask on this woman is actually from the First World War.
All right.
So it was like a bridal a bride caught in a time warp. That's what that piece was about. And I exhibited that in the RHA also.
Did you? Yeah.
And that's made out of very temporary material, but I still have it. I've kept it inside. It's kind of plaster Paris and wax and all that.
And the flesh tones, did you get that by painting?
I actually used color, Alan. Yes.
Did you?
Painting.
Oh, got you out.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yes. This piece, I wanted to include that because I haven't seen it for a while. It's in some garden. I read this amazing book by a man called William Dalrymple, and he talked a lot about the stylites who were all over the Middle East. These stylites were holy people who lived on top of mountains and hills and rocks, and people would come and pay homage to them. And they were kind of half hidden people. So that's how that piece came about. Again, that's in the temporary material. This is my pre-Jasmonite days. But the wonderful thing about working in a temporary material is you're not concerned. You have an incredible freedom. You're not having this huge outlay, a financial outlay, so that you are very free to make exactly what you want to make.
Yeah, interesting. Yes.
Yeah. So it's called Stylite. This was in Sculpture and Context. It was an angel with kind of broken wings. And I wanted to make it, it's a kind of cross, it's halfway between a stylite and an angel. So always with its humanity, more on the humanity side as opposed to the angelic side. There's a nice close-up of that, maybe.
And can one see that, or is it in a private collection?
It's in a private collection.
Is it? Okay. And there's a detail then, I think, of it here.
Yeah, there's a nice detail. So you can see what I mean by the wings. They're not perfect.
Yes.
And so that's made out of plaster Paris, wax. Now, I really enjoyed using color for that because the palette was very tight. It was blues, grays, and blacks. So I didn't have to, I wasn't challenged by all sorts of a different palette. And I found that the color enhanced the form.
Yes. Yeah.
This was a piece in Jasmonite. It looks small, but it's quite large. It's nearly 3 meters in height with steel wings. This was an interesting thing. I was asked by the professor of anatomy to put something on the wall in the College of Surgeons in the anatomy room. And in the anatomy room, as you know, there are just a lot of cadavers, dead bodies, and then there are students, and then the preceptors teaching them. And I wanted to make a piece that perhaps the students might just look up and think could be what happens after death. Yeah. So there's a little more than science going on. There's always another story. There's always a soul story. And yes. I just thought maybe it might arrest them from being overly analytical and scientific and thinking about a kind of almost cosmic picture as opposed to just the. So it's on the wall, and it was interesting. It was a difficult enough site, even though it was a huge wall. There were huge lights in the anatomy room. Yes. So I had to make the piece so it could be seen without the lights, which is why it's only 3 meters. I could have made it 6 meters, but then the lights would have got in the way. That's the interesting contextual questions that the sculptor has to think about before they put a sculpture up.
Of course, yeah, it's lovely.
This is called Ozymandias, and this came from that wonderful poem of Shelley's, the desert sands of King of Kings, and it's about something left behind. And it's a poem I love, and I'm still making heads about it. But it has a little bit of that military thing as well. It's missing an eye, and I enjoy the color actually very much. This is Jasmonite. It's beautiful to touch Jasmonite. It can almost feel like a warm bronze or cool marble.
Yes.
It's an incredible feeling. And that was exhibited again in the RHA.
Yeah, it certainly does look like marble, yeah.
Yeah, it does. It's an incredible material. Yeah.
Okay.
That's another head. That's in Jesmonite's natural color is white. Again, that's Ozymandias as well.
Yes.
I think the title's beautiful. I love the poem, and I just wanted to do a piece that's about a remnant. It's about something left behind. I like that idea as a sculptor.
Yes.
That it's almost like you find something.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the idea behind that.
This one now. This is called The Date, isn't it?
It's called First Date.
First Date, yeah.
Yeah. And there is a story about that, because that was exhibited in the RHA, and it was bought by, it's quite a poignant story, actually. It was bought by a man who wanted to give it to his wife for their anniversary. But what he hadn't seen was that the figure on the left, which is more like the dress suit, is actually a girl as well.
Yeah.
And he phoned me up several weeks later and said, oh, and he was really upset because he felt, I don't know, maybe he felt he'd been duped or something. And it
was pretty plain to me, Catherine.
Pardon?
It was pretty plain to me when I saw it.
Yes, I know. But this man was a much, much, much older man. He was like my father's age. And I actually felt really sorry for him.
Yeah.
So I said, look, I'll take it back, and I'll keep it, and I will make you a man to go with your girl.
And lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think sometimes you can't be too hardline, and it wasn't. It was a compromise that I felt very happy to do.
And you could repurpose the figure on the left.
Yeah. Well, it was in bronze. No, I just started all over again.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How tall are they?
They're about, God, I hate when you ask me that, probably about 60, 70 cm.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, quite high.
And there was no mold. It's just, most of the work I make are no molds. This was a piece called Cartographers. I went through a phase of doing a lot of work on globes, probably because I was doing a bit of traveling, I don't know. And the cartographers are people who make maps. So I've done a series of works of men on globes looking at other worlds, as it were.
Yes.
So that's, all those works are visible on my website, but that just gives people a sense of what I was doing.
Sure.
Oh, this piece was really connected to the UCD piece that I had, AK Homo bronze I showed you in the studio.
Yes.
These are two drawings. They were study drawings for the sculpture that I applied for.
Yeah.
For the sports arena, which was not successful, but it led to that whole show of AK Homo in the assembly room. So, so in many ways, it was very successful because it stretched me and then it moved me to another place. This was the proposal.
Right. So that's how you'd submit your.
That's how I would submit a lot of sculpture proposals. That would be in round 2. Like round 1, you would just. Generally, there are 2 rounds. So the second round, you bring in an architect because they're very good at contextualizing. Particularly if you can't see the building, it hasn't been built. They're very good at contextualizing the site and getting the sense of scale. A bit like the criminal courts. I couldn't quite see it, but the architect, Peter Cable, got it in seconds. So he said it's going to be this tall and blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that piece has led to a whole exhibition, a solo exhibition that I had in the assembly rooms. And you'll see what happened. So that's.
I think that's coming up soon, isn't it?
That's coming up. That led to this piece.
Yes.
That piece led to this piece.
And is that a miniature version of the large
That is a bronze that's in
Yeah.
existence. That's a miniature version. Yes. But
All right.
I made that bronze first. And then I thought, no, look, I have to make this large. I have to see what it looks like. I mean, I think a lot of the time, like when you're working as a sculptor, you're led, you get a feeling for something. You kind of think, I'd like to realize that in large, but you don't quite know how it's going to look. I never have a wholly definite plan. I have a sense or an idea, and it's
Yes.
like you're led by your intuition, and then your intelligence comes behind that. That's how I work. It's always you're led by your nose. Your intuition takes you to the place, and then your intelligence eventually says, "That's it.
Yeah.
Stop working. You've done it." Or,
so you know when to stop, do you?
yeah, you go. You just you know.
Sure.
It's done when it's done. So that was a drawing that led to that was partly UCD, but then not UCD. It was the beginning of a whole other exhibition story.
Okay. Now, I think sorry, I took something out there that I shouldn't have. We're going to stop sharing this at the moment, and we're going to go over to that video in the assembly room.
Bloody peacocks.
Can you control your children?
Yeah.
All right. Here we are.
This
is about 3 minutes. I pared it down to about that.
I was going along with the theme that I've been working on for several years, which is of man and wolf and their relationship between each other. Initially, I didn't really know why I was making these things. I started making men and wolves probably about 7 years ago, and I sort of have grown into it, and in a way this work that's here is a goodbye or a kind of signing off on that theme which has occupied my heart and soul for all these years. Making sculpture is a habit. It's not something you have a choice in. You just do it because you have to, and ultimately it's the thing that makes you happy or unhappy. So a non-commissioned work gives a sculptor incredible freedom to pursue a pathway that does not have to be commercially viable. It's not answerable to the public the way public sculpture should be, but that probably stems from the fact that I am primarily and passionately a figurative sculptor. Although I love abstract work, figurative seems to be what I always end up doing. I actually work simultaneously on each of those figures, because you couldn't work on one figure, finish it, and then start another. So they were each kind of emerging, as it were, out of that chrysalis, or whatever word you want to use, in a kind of even, simultaneous manner. I wanted them to have enough space so that human beings could walk through them. I didn't want them to be sort of tight together, because then they wouldn't breathe. And the materials I use are they're kitchen sink materials, plaster Paris, metal, wax, pigment. So it's not a challenge that way, in that I have the freedom to make these things. And this piece down here was conceived as apparently the Tibetans, their mythological creatures are blue wolves, which I subsequently discovered, having been making blue wolves. Sometimes there's a zeitgeist going on. And it's about a boy, the young boy, not having that inbuilt reserve or fear of really anything. They would just simply go up and embrace something. I ended up having 5 small kind of remnants. I call them remnants on purpose because they're remnants of something that did exist, and they're related to that kind of wolf theme. These pieces might seem unrelated to the work in the assembly rooms, the smaller wolf remnants, but that was the genesis of them. You make this work because you have to make it. You don't have a choice. And then once it's done, it's time to move it to the outer world, the world beyond your studio. Now, whether that's out in a field, so that it's out of your mental zone, or to a city, it doesn't actually matter, but it's about the process of letting go.
And what an amazing space to show.
Oh, it was a beautiful space.
I'm ashamed to say I've never been in it. And where exactly is it? Because I intend visiting it.
It's on South William Street.
Yeah.
So it's on a corner. It was built as an exhibition space in the 1700s. It's an octagonal room. Now the Georgian Society have done it up. So the walls are no longer, the walls have been re-rendered, and they've put down a very nice wooden floor. So it has a completely different feeling, but it's open to the public.
Is it? So is it near the Powers Court Townhouse Centre, is it?
It's very near Powers Court Townhouse Centre. It's just on the corner there. I mean, it's an interesting building.
Now we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. We have two more images to show, and then we're going to go to questions. Okay, so I'll just move on from there. Can you see that?
Yes, I can see that.
Good. Okay. So tell us about this.
This is Icarus's first flight. So it's kind of a bird. The head of that bronze figure is like a bird head. And he's standing on a ladder without wings, obviously, because Daedalus hasn't come in yet and made those wings, ready to fly. Yeah. So that's the story of that piece. And it's bronze. Yeah. And
this is the last piece we want to show.
One of the globe pieces that I was telling you about. It's called Unknown World. And they're like cartographers looking like old explorers, I suppose.
Yes. Is that a large piece?
No, it would be very interesting to do it large, and maybe I might someday.
Yes. Yeah. Brilliant. Catherine, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for all of that. We're going to break with tradition slightly in that normally I go to questions and then I ask you what's your favorite work by another artist. But I'm intrigued, and we'll do it now purely because I actually have the image to show. I'm intrigued what artists pick or choose as some work that they would absolutely love to have in their home. Because very often it doesn't reflect their work at all. It's quite different. So tell me about yours, and then I'll show it.
Well, I actually chose two pieces. I because I'm a sculptor, I chose a piece of sculpture by Liz Frink, one of her heads. I particularly like that head because it's very hard to, if you're looking at it, it's almost like a mask. You can't quite get into that head, and it's quite confrontational. I love her work, Elizabeth Frink's work. I mean, she would be one of my favorite sculptors. Yeah. So that's one of the pieces I chose. And then the other piece, I'm absolutely in love with Rembrandt as a painter, and I went over to see his show in London. There were portraits he did of himself, self-portraits. I mean, there's something incredibly poignant about him as a painter. I mean, I'm not a painter, but he seems to be able to, you look at the surface of the canvas, and it seems as if the flesh on the head is almost moving. And the painting I chose of his that I would like to take away is the painting of the man with the golden helmet, because I've been doing helmets, and I mean, it's an exquisite work of art, and that helmet exudes feather and gold. And maybe because I like putting helmets on my Ozymandias heads, it resonated somewhat.
Wonderful.
So that is.
That's what you want over the fireplace.
Over the fireplace.
Yeah.
And Morris Cullinan's colour. That's Elizabeth Frink.
That's exactly, yeah.
They're really powerful, works. You can sense the energy from them.
Yes, yeah.
So they're the pieces I chose.
Very good. Now, what I'm going to do, Catherine, is I'm going to read out some comments first, and there are several. So I'll try and get through them quite quickly, and then I'll unmute people so if they wish to ask you a question in person, they can do so. This is wonderful, Catherine. Thank you so much. That's Myra. Brilliant work. Love the smooth materials of the cartographers, and then the more textural pieces in contrast. Very exploratory mind. The figures in the anatomy room are my favorite work in the entire Artist Well series to date. It's magnificent. Oh, that's saying something.
That's saying something, yes.
Right, let me just grab a few more. Colette Grant. There is a great intelligence behind your works. Your works are stunning. I love your nude man in UCD. Many thanks for sharing your work process with us. That's Colette Grant. Fiona O'Doherty says, thanks so much, Catherine. Inspiring talk. Saoirse Farrell, fantastic. To see all your work. Fascinating interview and insights. Thank you so much. Malachy, amazing once again. Thanks, Alan. And thank you, Catherine. Morlin, your work is stunning. I love your figures and the wings and the man in UCD. Carol, fantastic, Catherine. You're truly an amazing sculptress. Sarah Manson says, incredible work, so inspiring. Love this talk. And I'm just going to run through. Is that a peacock in the background? Asks Jane. No, it's our kids.
Yeah.
Bridget, that exhibition in the assembly room was magnificent.
Thank you, Bridget.
Alison, beautiful, Catherine. Great pieces, lovely work. Love the angels, Catherine. I have to go now. We'll watch the whole thing on YouTube. Okay, look. Sorry, Morris, I'll just read out. You are a superstar, Catherine. Your work is viscerally thought-provoking. Great interview. Thanks for that, Morris. Listen, I'm going to see if anybody would like to say anything in person. So let me just unmute people. Tom Barrett says, can you paint Jessamite over wax? Fabulous work. Can you paint Jessamite over wax?
You can. I'm not sure how stable it's going to be in the long run, Tom. It's an experiment I have to try. I can get back to you on it. That's wax, as I say, in heat is unstable. So maybe if the Jessamite is thick enough, it should work.
Yeah. Okay. Catherine Gagan says, Catherine, you're some woman. The sheer physicality of creating these sculptures, they are wonderful.
Yes,
just
I do
unmute
have a question.
Hi, Jacques. Hi.
I find it interesting. A friend of mine has created or started a body of work about how women are shown in art. And the woman model, the nude particularly, in so many pieces of work, you have a nude woman, a dressed man. And I note, perhaps maybe it's just the choice of work, but mostly you have nude men in your work. Is that a pushback against the traditional approach to showing women or showing people in art?
Good question.
That's a good question. It's a very good question. I think subconsciously I felt there's so many naked women and there are so few naked men, and you run into this dichotomy of it's so inbuilt to all female DNA that if you're going to do a naked woman, it should veer towards perhaps more pleasing or more kind of an aesthetic kind of beauty. And I think doing a male gives you permission to just it's really what you're really trying to do is capture humanity or a soul of a piece. And it always seemed to be that, yes, I ended up doing a male, and perhaps it was subconscious that I decided not to eulogize the female form the way I have done the male form. I don't know if that gives you the answer you're looking for, but it's all I didn't have a specific answer I was looking for. I was just, I found it interesting anyhow.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And thanks for bringing that up. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question, please. Hi, Catherine. How are you? Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Hello.
It's Alison here. Hello, Susie. I'm very interested in this idea that you don't know what you're doing when you start out. And I'm very interested in the idea that you build something. And we have a mutual friend who is a psychic who says that the artist has an extra room, which he or she enters, and then things come from that extra room, but there's no direct access to it. You have to journey to it. And I'm wondering if that's your attitude to it, is that you don't initially decide, but you allow that other person to come in, or those other forces to come in and to shape.
I think that's so interesting, and I think that's I think that's part of the discipline and process of being an artist, is that you make yourself be in that place. So my place is my studio or my wax room. So you're present there. You might have a vague idea, but it's only through the process of working that you gain access, as you beautifully said, to that other room, or the other room comes to you. It's not, you can never find it. It's like the more you look for it, the more elusive it becomes. So but you have to be present for it to be there, for it to arrive, if that answers your question. But it's through the whole process and the discipline of working. You know, waiting for some sort of other room or muse to happen, but that doesn't happen to me. It happens when I'm out there and ready.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was very interesting. Thanks, Alison.
Hi, Catherine. It's Carol Shoebottom here.
Hi, Carol.
How are you, Alan? And well done again. I missed a couple family commitments, unfortunately. Catherine, I'm in awe of your work as a woman. I was thinking about that answer you were giving about the male and the female, and I think that you probably just go in and I'm not explaining myself very well. I'm not talking enough to people. But basically what I wanted to ask, do you ever take on an apprentice? Because I'd love to learn. I've done some sculpture with Liz O'Kane, but I'd love to learn your working with the resinite, or the whatever you call it.
Jasmonite. Yeah.
Jasmonite.
Yeah.
But I'll let you answer. Sorry to.
I don't tend to take on an apprentice because it's such a visceral, private process that you feel very exposed when you're in your studio, and particularly because every single piece you make ends up being a struggle, and halfway through, or maybe 3/4 way through, you think, I hate this. I don't even know why I started making it. I don't think it's successful, and it's like you reach this big wall, and then you somehow there's a chink of light, or just one little piece of that sculpture that says, go on, just give it another 2 or 3 days, and then you break through. So all that's terribly private, actually, and I don't really like people in my studio, because I always feel more exposed in my studio than I would when I exhibit a whole body of work, because I've been through that horrible process of, doubt and angst and all those things that every artist, whether they're a painter, printer, whatever, they all suffer from. But Carol, if you want to come down, I will certainly, that's fine. You can come and we'll go through the Jasmonite process.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank
now,
you.
Margaret, did you want to...
Yes, I'm unmuted now. I wanted to say to Catherine, I find it extraordinary that certain pieces, although they are actually heavy, seem to be extremely light. I'm conscious of how you achieve a feeling of weight, apart from the fact that the material is weighty, and how you manage to have the wall pieces feeling as though they might fly out of their own. Are you conscious of that?
Of creating lightness. Is that what you're saying in the work?
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to achieve a lot of the time is a sense of leaving the place that it's in. So that piece is on some sort of almost, it's a mental journey, the work, and perhaps that's conveyed then. It gets some of that in the ether, that the piece takes on that feeling that I'm trying to convey.
Yes,
that's my best answer for you.
Yes. I think it's very important in your work. It brings us to other places.
It brings you to some other place, and I think art, in general, painting, sculpture, theatre, music. I think that should be in some ways the function of art, that it takes you out of your own zone into another zone, and then it becomes successful if you can achieve that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Margaret, for that. I'll just mute you again. And anybody else like to ask a question? I know there's some other people who unmuted themselves.
Hello, Alan.
Yes. Oh, hi.
Elizabeth Cope.
Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Say congratulations to Catherine. She's a powerhouse of a woman. And we have a lovely piece of Catherine's here at Shankill Castle. And we absolutely love it. Jeffrey and I go out every morning and we say, gosh, who's down there in the garden? And it's Catherine's. There are two people, but it's the wolf. And we just love it. Just to say, and it's Catherine's property, but we're trying to buy it from her. But just to congratulate her and wish her the best of luck.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
May I ask?
Yep.
Where the Elizabeth Frink is? I love it.
I don't know.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Does that happen a lot where some of your work is bought and you don't know where it's gone?
Well, that lady asked me where the Elizabeth Frink piece was.
Yes.
Oh, I don't have a clue where a lot of my work is. No.
Yeah.
I lose track.
Does that bother you?
No, not really, because it's not mine. It belongs to that person.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. It's just some people get very attached, don't they?
Yeah, and I'm always ready to let go.
Yeah.
And then there are pieces I've kept myself.
Yes, yes. Danny Osborne says, love the UCD piece. Thanks, Catherine. Nicola, who I know works in UCD, she says, I work in UCD and it's fascinating to hear the story behind that sculpture. Sarah Manson says, do you have any advice to give fellow aspiring artists on their journeys?
I suppose my advice is be prepared to bleed. That's my advice.
Yeah.
And if you're prepared to do that, then things will happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask Catherine a question, please?
Yes, off you go.
Have you ever thought of doing a sculpture of your peacock? Because he for sure wants attention from you.
I was going to say it was a cockerel who had a voice problem. No, no, I have no desire to do a sculpture of a peacock. No.
Catherine, thank you so much. That was a fantastic journey, both to your wax room and your workspace, and also to see some of the fabulous work that you've done, and to see it in situ as well, which is also quite interesting. I've really enjoyed this. I hope you have too, because it's very liberating, I think, when you kind of see everything in one fell swoop.
Yes.
And I think a lot of artists have said that they find it quite interesting that they have to go through a chronological sequence of how their career and work has developed.
Yes,
a lot of people sort of forget about it, and
Yes, yeah, it's like rereading your life story.
Yes.
So, but you're a good facilitator, Alan.
Oh, thank you.
Been very easy to be interviewed by you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Listen, I'm sure we've all enjoyed that. And speaking for everybody, thank you so much again, Catherine, for all you've done and for being so generous with your sort of philosophy behind the work you do and how you do it, and your process and your work practice and so on. It's been fantastic. So thank you. So next week, we have another artist. All will be revealed as usual on the social media on Wednesday. So until then, thank you all so much for tuning in from all over the place, including our friend George down in Victoria in Australia and elsewhere. So thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you next week at the same time. Cheerio now. Bye.
Thank you, Alan. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Catherine. Take care.